Cyrus Bogard rode into Cedar Falls, Colorado, like a ghost returning to the land of the living. The sun beat down on his dusty coat as his weary mare kicked up dirt from the long road behind them. 5 years in prison had taken his youth, his pride, and almost his hope. Now he was a man trying to find a new place in a world that remembered him only by the worst thing he had ever done. The town ahead looked worn by time. Faded buildings, wooden sidewalks, and crooked hitching posts lined the main street. People moved about their business with slow, tired steps. The familiar smell of horses, tobacco, and heat filled the air. It almost felt like home once. But the weight of his past pressed against his chest as he dismounted outside Murphy's saloon. Cyrus pushed open the swinging doors. The lively chatter inside died at once. Cards were set down, whiskey glasses lowered, all eyes locked on him. Pete Murphy, wiping a glass behind the bar, stared with a tight jaw. "Well, I'll be," Pete said without a smile. "Thought you'd ride far away after what happened in Tombstone." Quote. Cyrus took off his hat, revealing long, dark hair and a beard that hid a jagged scar on his jaw. "Just looking for honest work, Pete." A harsh laugh burst from a corner table. 3 ranchers sat there, each one with whiskey in hand and suspicion in their eyes. The biggest of them, Thaddeus Clay, stood with a sneer under his yellow-stained mustache. "Honest work," Clay said. "That's a fine joke from a killer." The word hit the room like a bullet. Killer, the name he could never outrun. "I paid my debt," Cyrus said, steady but tired. 5 years locked away. "I ain't looking for trouble." Clay's hand rested near the gun on his hip. "Trouble finds men like you." The bartender pointed toward the door. "We don't serve men with blood on their hands. Best keep riding." Cyrus swallowed what pride he had left, placed his hat back on, and stepped outside. He tried the general store, the telegraph office, and even the livery. Each time the door closed fast. Folks crossed the road to avoid him. Children were pulled inside by frightened mothers. By sundown, hunger gnawed at his stomach, and his mare's head hung low with exhaustion. He stood at the edge of town, wondering if it was better to sleep under the stars than face another slammed door. That was when he heard a woman's voice raised in anger. Across the dusty road, a young widow stood by a wagon, arguing with a banker in a fancy vest. Her dark hair was pinned neatly beneath a bonnet. A little boy clung to her skirts, holding a wooden toy horse. "You cannot take my ranch," she said with fire in her green eyes. "Mrs. Turner," the banker replied with a cold smile, "your husband's death does not cancel his debts. You have 6 months to pay what is owed. And you will soon learn that ranching is no job for a woman alone." The boy looked up at his mother, scared but trying to be brave. She placed a hand on his head. "We will manage," she told the banker. "Not likely," he returned. "Think on my offer. Selling now might save you and your son from a hard winter." He tipped his hat like he'd done her a kindness and rode off. Cyrus found himself walking closer, against every ounce of caution he had learned in prison. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I couldn't help hearing. I'm looking for work if you need hands." She studied his worn clothes, the tired set of his shoulders, the scar on his face. Her eyes narrowed. "What kind of work?" "Horses, fences, cattle, hard labor, the kind most ain't eager for." "References?" Cyrus hesitated. "The truth always came with trouble. I've been away for some years, but I work honest." Her trust battled against fear in her eyes. "Your name?" "Cyrus Bogard, ma'am." Her mouth parted slightly. Recognition. The stories had reached her too. "You're the one from Tombstone," she whispered. She pulled her son closer. "The man who killed." "Yes, ma'am," he said before she could finish. "I served my time. I ain't asking for charity. Just a chance." She looked back toward the town where everyone had turned her away, then down at her little boy, who stared up at Cyrus with curious eyes instead of fear. Finally, she spoke. $20 a month, meals and a bed in the barn. You work hard. Respect my land and my son, and whatever happened in Tombstone stays there." Cyrus nodded, relief hitting him like rain on desert earth. "Yes, ma'am. You won't regret it." "I hope not," she replied softly. "I cannot afford more regrets." The sun dipped behind the hills as they rode toward her ranch. A small place, broken in spots but full of potential. A house that once knew laughter. A barn that needed mending. Fields waiting for careful hands. And a widow who needed help, but would never admit how badly. That night, Cyrus lay in the barn on a rough bed of hay. The sound of a boy's soft laughter floated from the house, warm and full of life. For the first time in 5 long years, he felt something like hope. But in the quiet darkness, past still clung to him like a shadow. He knew trouble had a way of finding him. And this time, if it did, it might destroy the only family he could ever have. Cyrus woke before sunrise every day, the way he used to on his father's ranch long ago. The Turner Ranch was quiet in the early morning, fog stretching across the pastures like a blanket hiding the land from yesterday's troubles. He saddled the horses, fed the livestock, and fixed anything that could be mended before breakfast. Samuel followed him everywhere, small boots stomping through mud and snow like he was a grown cowboy. The boy asked 100 questions a day, and Cyrus answered each one with patience he didn't know he still had. "Mr. Cyrus," Samuel asked while they repaired a broken fence, "are you dangerous?" Cyrus hammered a nail into the post and paused. "I was once, but not anymore. I'm learning to be better." "My mama says everyone makes mistakes," Samuel said. "She says that don't mean they're bad forever." Cyrus smiled a little. Samuel was right. That hope was the very reason he stayed. Opaline Turner watched them from the porch sometimes. At first from a distance, like she wasn't sure if she should trust him being near her son. But little by little she stepped closer into his days. She brought him coffee while he worked. She asked his opinion on the cattle. She smiled more, and whenever her eyes met his, something warm passed between them that both feared to name. The peaceful days didn't last long. One cold morning, Sheriff Landry arrived at the ranch. A stern woman with gray hair tied tight, she rode like someone always expecting trouble waiting around a corner. She dismounted and tipped her hat, but her eyes were sharp as steel. "Mrs. Turner," the sheriff said, "I'm hearing talk about your new ranch hand." Cyrus stepped forward. "I got nothing to hide, Sheriff." "Maybe not," Landry said, "but folks in town remember Tombstone. They say a man who spilled blood once might spill it again." Opaline crossed her arms. "Cyrus has done nothing but help us since the day he arrived." "People worry," the sheriff replied, "especially about a widow with a young child." Samuel stood behind his mother, peeking out at the sheriff with wide eyes. "Sheriff," Cyrus said, keeping his voice calm, "I ain't looking for a fight. I'm just trying to work and keep my head down." Quote. Sheriff Landry studied him for a long moment before nodding. "I hope that's true, because trouble follows men who walk with shadows. Just be sure you know which side of the law you're riding on." As she rode off, Opaline let out a slow breath. Cyrus could see fear trying to find its way into her heart. He wished he knew how to chase it away. The week grew colder. Snow threatened the ground each morning. The work grew harder. But there was comfort in routine. Then came the night the storm rolled in. Wind howled through the valley, and rain punished the barn roof. Cyrus hurried to get the horses calm, lightning flashing bright as gunfire. Samuel helped gather feed until he grew sleepy and curled himself into a warm pile of hay. Opaline arrived at the barn with a lantern. Her shawl was soaked from the rain. When she closed the door behind her, the barn fell into a golden half-light. The storm outside made them feel alone in the world. "The storm's getting worse," she said, brushing wet hair from her face. "It'll pass," Cyrus said, rubbing down his mare. "This barn's held through worse." She stepped closer, hands trembling slightly. "Cyrus, can I ask you something?" He turned toward her. "Anything, ma'am." "That night in Tombstone, the one they whisper about, what really happened?" Cyrus leaned against the stall, rain pounding above them. His voice came out rough. "I fought a man. He went down hard, hit his head wrong, died a few days later. I never meant for it to go that far." Opaline's eyes softened with understanding. You paid your time, she said. That matters more than what they say. He lowered his gaze. Sometimes I ain't sure it does. She took one small step closer. Close enough he could see a fleck of gold in her green eyes. Close enough to feel her breath. Close enough for danger of a different kind. You have changed, she whispered. Samuel sees it. I see it. Cyrus swallowed hard. 5 years without a woman's touch had built a wall inside him, one holding back loneliness like a rising flood. Now that wall was cracking. Opaline, he said, voice shaking. I have not had a woman in 5 years. Quote. Her lips parted just slightly. Her heartbeat fluttered in her throat. She knew what he meant. She felt it too. I shouldn't want this, she whispered, but I do. Their faces moved closer, hearts pounding, something powerful pulling them together. Mama? Samuel's voice broke the air like a rope snapping. Opaline quickly stepped back. The spell was gone. She picked up the sleeping boy and held him close. We should go inside, she said without looking at Cyrus. Yes, ma'am, he answered softly. But as he watched her leave the barn, lantern casting a trail of warm light behind her, he knew that moment wasn't over. It was just waiting. Trouble wasn't done with them, and soon the town would make sure of it. Snow fell heavier with each passing day, wrapping the ranch in a white silence that felt peaceful on the surface. But Cyrus sensed trouble moving underneath like a river of ice. Word had spread through Cedar Falls that the widow Turner had hired a killer. Folks whispered that she was losing her mind. Others warned she was risking her boy's life. The town judged what it did not understand. Cyrus tried to push the noise away and focused on his work. Fences stood stronger. The barn roof no longer leaked. The cattle had shelter from the freezing nights. Samuel laughed more each day, and Opaline smiled more too. Those things gave him strength. But trouble came anyway. One cold morning, Eli Whitmore, the banker who had threatened Opaline before, arrived with Thaddeus Clay and 2 other men. They rode in like they owned the land, horses kicking up snow at the barn entrance. Clay dismounted first, hands resting too close to his gun. Bogard, he said with a smirk. Still here, ain't that something? Cyrus stepped forward, calm but ready. I work here, that's all. Whitmore looked past Cyrus to the house. We're here to speak with Mrs. Turner about the mortgage. Opaline walked out, chin high, Samuel standing behind her like a brave little soldier. I told you before, she said. The ranch is not for sale. Whitmore smiled cold. Circumstances have changed. With winter coming, I doubt you'll make your payment. But I am still willing to extend a certain kindness. A woman alone needs strong company. He reached for her hand. Cyrus stepped between them without thinking. You heard her, Cyrus said. She said no. Clay's grin widened. There he is, the dangerous man. Knew you couldn't pretend forever. Whitmore's cold eyes locked on Cyrus. Sheriff Landry will hear that you threatened decent men. Opaline's voice cracked like a whip. Leave my property now. Whitmore tipped his hat, still smiling. I hope the boy stays warm this winter. Some children don't survive out here. That threat burned hotter than a coal in Cyrus's chest, but he stood still. He would not be the man they wanted him to be. The men rode away, laughing while snow swallowed their tracks. Things quieted for a time, but everyone could feel the storm growing, one no weather could bring. Days later, Sheriff Landry returned, but her face was troubled. Cyrus, she said, avoiding Opaline's eyes, I have a warrant. Claims you threatened Eli Whitmore and Thaddeus Clay with violence. That's a lie, Opaline said. I believe you, the sheriff replied softly, but a court might not. Cyrus sighed and lifted his hands. I'll come peaceful. Don't scare the boy. Samuel cried as the sheriff shackled Cyrus and rode him away. Opaline tried to comfort her son, but her heart was breaking too. Inside the jail, Cyrus sat alone in a cold cell. Hours passed, then the door opened, and Whitmore walked in, smug and clean. I'll give you freedom, Whitmore said. Tonight. But only if you leave and never come back. Cyrus stared at him. This about land or Opaline? Whitmore's eyes darkened. I'll have both, one way or another. Cyrus said nothing. But inside, a fire lit that nothing could smother. Before midnight, the cell door opened again, not Whitmore. "Deputy Miller, you're getting out," Miller said. "Charges dropped." Cyrus blinked. "Why?" Miller nodded toward the street. "Because Opaline Turner walked into my office with proof that Whitmore's been stealing from widows for years. Taking land. Breaking families. She found the truth." Freedom tasted sharp. Cyrus hurried into the cold night where Opaline and Samuel waited with horses. "You shouldn't have risked this," he said. She gripped his hand tight. "We risk nothing when we fight for what's right." They rode to town the next morning, snow crunching beneath hooves, people gathering fast when they saw who was coming. Sheriff Landry stood ready. So did 2 federal marshals. Whitmore and his men stepped out of the bank, confusion on their faces. Opaline didn't wait. "You've been tricking people for years, taking homes from those who have no one but themselves." She held up the papers. The sheriff took them. The marshals moved. Whitmore tried to run, but Clay panicked and knocked him into the snow. The banker screamed as his hands were shackled, the same cold metal Cyrus had worn. The crowd didn't cheer. They simply watched the proud man fall. Clay tried to pull his gun. Bad choice. Cyrus stepped forward. Calm. Controlled. He kicked the gun away and held Clay down until the sheriff grabbed him. When it was over, people stared at Cyrus differently. Not as a monster, not as a rumor, but as a man. A good man. Samuel ran to him, arms tight around his waist. "Are you staying?" the boy asked. Cyrus bent to meet his eyes. "If your mama wants me." Opaline stepped close. Snowflakes rested in her dark hair. Her eyes were full of gratitude and something deeper. "I want you," she said softly, "not as my ranch hand." Cyrus's heart pounded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she whispered, "that this family needs you, and I need you." Her hand found his. He took it gently, warm in the cold. "If you'll have us, Cyrus Bogard, stay, be part of our home." He pulled her close. "I love you, Opaline Turner. I want to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve this second chance." She smiled through tears. "Then don't let go." Samuel laughed as Cyrus lifted him with one strong arm, a father's arm. Cyrus looked at the ranch waiting in the distance, snow-covered, quiet, full of hope. He had come to Cedar Falls alone and broken, but now he belonged. To a land, to a woman, to a boy who believed in him. Cyrus Bogard had a home again, and he would fight every day to keep it.